Good data governance is often looked upon as a compliance burden, but often doing data right, and in particular adopting lean data practices, can lead to more, not less, innovation. This talk will touch on some of the data governance developments happening in jurisdictions such as the UK, the EU, India, Canada, and elsewhere, and how a new paradigm of less is more with regards to data can be beneficial to privacy and businesses. Join Raegan MacDonald, Director of Public Policy at the Mozilla Corporation and board member of Digital Freedom Fund, DFF, and EDRi, to discuss the relationship between digital innovation and lean data and practicing data governance.
Hi, I'm Raegan MacDonald. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Mozilla. Today I want to talk a little bit about innovation, data governance, and how a more ethical approach to data, like lean data practices, can lead to more and not less innovation. So here's a bit of an overview of the presentation I want to give today. I want to talk a little bit about how Mozilla approaches questions of data, innovation, and privacy. Our main focus is on driving internal and external impact that are grounded in the principles of our mission and our manifesto. And so to unpack a bit of that today, I want to talk first off about this, as we see it, a false binary between data governance and innovation. Then how Mozilla approaches data collection internally and our lean data practices toolkit. And as well, I want to close off with some thoughts, some of our thinking on the ongoing evolution of data governance, including data stewardship. So first, to start off with this false binary between data governance and innovation, common parlance is often to look at data governance as a compliance obligation, when in fact we think it should be looked at as a competitive advantage. Many data strategies paint this picture of excessive compliance when it's not the case, especially for startups and SMEs, because in our view, we see that good data governance can help make better decisions and ultimately build better products. I want to show how this is the case and puncture this idea that data governance, or rules around data, can only stifle innovation. And data scientists are often today the fulcrum of how technology and even non-tech companies are gauged for their ability to innovate. This will be a familiar triangle to anyone who's in data science. This has become really a roadmap for building data products, and it's credited to Monica Vergati, who built this when she was at LinkedIn. And everyone wants to get to that top piece of the pyramid. That's where the AI products live. That's where the innovation lives. And her point is that there are many steps that a company needs to take in order to get to that point. And this means that companies are investing and hiring specialists for each and every one of these layers in this pyramid. The problem is that these elements are not yet part of the pyramid. Privacy and transparency are not built into these steps. And typically, data scientists don't think about privacy or transparency, or when they do, they are overruled by those in charge, who are really focused on the outcome and may not realize that keeping useless data around is pointless and even potentially counterproductive. And the path to getting to AI, to that top of the pyramid, as fast as possible doesn't typically include time to care about user privacy or transparency. This concept of getting it all, collecting it all, and figuring out what to do later, very much in line with the moving fast and break things mantra, is really what prevents these elements from being built into this pyramid. And we think that it's important for SMEs to focus on collecting better and not more data, and to ensure that that data is governed well. So I want to take a big step back and encourage you to think about data collection from a privacy-first mentality. The idea would be to develop a culture where thinking about user privacy early can lead to better quality data in the end. It's a way of front-loading the innovation work to the beginning instead of the end of the product cycle. This is really important if you're thinking about building data products, since quality will really become the competitive advantage. Data, for all intents and purposes, you can consider to be infinite. But what is really the challenge is deriving the value out of the data. And what we've found is that what's good for the user is often good for business. And there's a couple elements here that we've found which are very useful, including less time wasted, more data science productivity, and better models which are produced by the data scientists. So I'll walk you through those right now. So the first takeaway, a greater focus on user privacy means that in the longer run, you waste much less time. As companies become more and more focused on data-driven decision-making, this means that incorrect data can lead to bad decisions. And bad quality data means that a lot of useless meetings and arguing about whether the data is right or wrong. Second takeaway here is that data management practices and a privacy-first mentality are really closely linked. If you focus on data management practices, there are many other downstream benefits that come. And one particular benefit is that you have much greater productivity with your data scientists. And so it's interesting to actually think about what data scientists spend their time on. A Forbes survey recently looked exactly into this and found that most data scientists spend about 60% of their time doing cleaning and organizing work. So a lot of money is actually being spent on these expensive data scientists doing effectively janitor work. So messy data leads to sloppy data collection and management and wasting time. And the third takeaway here is that better quality data means better quality models, which is really what most of the companies are trying to get to when they're investing in data models. That's the top of the pyramid piece. And this point is made often in the fairness, accountability, and transparency world of AI. We always say garbage in, garbage out. There's no amount of machine learning magic that can fix biased or sloppy or crappy data. And many fairness machine learning researchers believe that fair models are actually more and more accurate. And so I brought up these 3 points about how a privacy-first culture can lead to better quality data. There's less time wasted, you have more data science productivity, and better models that are produced by the data scientists. And this is also something that we have very much implemented at Mozilla. So Mozilla, as you know, we're probably most well known for the open source web browser Firefox. We have hundreds of millions of users around the world. And yet our company, we're just shy of 1,000 people. And so we're not a mega company like Google or Facebook or Amazon. And it means that we have to be much thriftier in terms of our time and how we manage and use our resources. We can't really compete on the basis of resources. And so this approach, which is privacy focused and transparency focused, is not only part of our mission and our manifesto, which seeks to put users in the driver's seat to advance privacy and security, but it's also out of necessity. And we think that many companies who don't feel that they have infinite resources or a lot of other resources to be able to compete with mega large companies might be in the same boat as us. And so this is how we came about thinking about what we call lean data practices. So this is a toolkit and includes the practices that Mozilla has applied in Firefox and our other products, and also what we hope to teach to SMEs, to startups, and frankly, to governments to change the paradigm around thinking about data as something that is necessary to collect in order to advance innovation, and to think about data more from the lens of privacy and security and risk. And so it's not necessarily about not collecting data, this lean data practices principles, but really about being smarter about how you do it. And the whole toolkit is really premised around the idea that companies have the responsibility to protect users and company data. And it's built around 3 key pillars. The first one is to engage your users. So to keep customers informed and empowered. The second one is to stay lean. First, decide if all of your data collection actually delivers value. And third is to build security. Learn how to protect your customer data. No, and I'll walk you through those, but just to underline that we think that the lean data practices approach can really help to grow your business. And there are a lot of positive benefits and connected to that, risks that this approach avoids and mitigates in doing that. And one of the top things is brand trust. Brand trust is really something that can't really be bought, but it's something that is earned. And being trustworthy about and clear about your data, adopting privacy-focused approaches and policies, giving your individuals information and options really helps to build that trust. Leaner data also helps to make quicker decisions, as I've discussed earlier, but it also provides less of an impact on servers, which is helping the environment. So we should all be thinking more about leaner data in that sense as well. In addition to, reducing storage cost, including increasing operational efficiency and employee trust. And so just to walk you through the three steps here, the first one is to engage your users. Do customers know about your practices? Do they have choice and control? Are your privacy policies accessible? Are you producing transparency reports? So this is about taking another step. Instead of downloading a stock standard terms of service or privacy policy, but really thinking about how to make it clear and human readable and human understandable. And some tips here, designing your privacy policy to be more clear. I think one really notable point here is to find the most complicated or tricky thing in your policy and to really focus on that and try to make it more clear. And then another really important aspect is to give people options. So it's not only just about engaging them and informing them, but also giving your customers the opportunity to opt out and to customize their own experience. Second pillar here, stay lean. Decide if all of your collection delivers value. So this is, again, what I had mentioned earlier in the presentation about front-loading the work. Thinking about why are you collecting it and when does it get deleted? And some tips for staying lean: stop collecting things that you don't need. Constantly be evaluating your old data, cleaning it out, doing constant Marie Kondos on your data stores. The third and final pillar here is to build security. So learn how to protect customer data. And not just, how are you protecting it, but what are the different security measures that you have in place and what kind of mitigation practices do you have? And so figuring out different scenarios in which you could imagine a breach or some kind of security issue should be something that your teams or internal teams are constantly preparing for and having a plan A to Z. And some tips here: multi-factor authentication, using password managers, of course, thinking about role-based access controls and incident response plans. And then, so to come back to this pyramid, just to close off on the LDP aspect, in this race for innovation, the tools and the platforms for machine learning and predictive analytics will continue to be commoditized as the norm. And success, in our view, will depend on the quality of the data. And the best thing that companies can do is to instill this lean data practices, principles, and approach to data governance into the company's core business model, into its culture, and into its brand. And so now I want to shift gears a bit and look at share some reflections on some legislative trends. So industry practices are really important because they can influence laws, but laws also are influenced by company practices. So we think the two are really important to pursue in parallel. And governments around the world are developing approaches right now on data stewardship, on alternative data governance, and non-personal data sharing. So the next couple of slides, I want to go over some of the important areas that regulators are looking at in this evolution of data governance and how industry practices and regulatory developments need to be evolving hand in hand. So just to give you a bit of an overview of the political context that answers why. governments are looking at why governments are looking at these new sort of data governance models. And by way of caveat, I should say that data protection laws are by no means a ubiquitous standard around the world, but a wide range of governments are starting to look beyond personal data in their quest to rein in harmful practices of technology on society. So governments are approaching this issue of how data governance should evolve with the goal not only of enhancing data protection for individuals, but also thinking about collectives, how individuals or collectives can reap the benefits of data, since we live in a primarily data-driven society, and also improving competition, spurring innovation, in addition to empowering individuals. And some of these tentative positive outcomes, by caveat, I'm speaking on a very high level of the different ways we have advised governments. I'm not talking about any specific laws or guidance, which I will mention later in this presentation. But some of the positive factors that we think governments should be considering when they're looking at empowering users or empowering collectives is accountability. So making sure to improve accountability towards both users and to governments. Portability, in enabling the comprehensive ability for data to actually move out of silos, to use data for empowerment, and data access, empowering users, gig workers, or collectives to actually access data for empowerment. So this is a really important point, trying to make data work for people, and for people to actually get value and use out of their data, rather than what is sort of the status quo right now is a sort of passive relationship where people's data is just collected. And then finally, improving competition. So as I had mentioned before, providing smaller players with better chances of competing in crowded sectors. So opening those silos, enhancing portability, allowing data to work for people and for collectives are really what we think are some of the tentative positive outcomes of thinking about these new data governance models and these new systems. And at the same time, some of the potential pitfalls that we have warned against are that regulators should avoid, and generally you'll see these are issues that exist today, right? So these are major challenges around data today, and so we also want to generally make sure that we aren't replicating or aggravating the problems of today in tomorrow's model. So this is really also an opportunity for us to try to think about how to do data differently. So just quickly to walk through these aspects, government access. I mean, any compilation or concentration of data increases this chance for surveillance, for greater surveillance, for exclusion, and for market favoritism. So we definitely warn governments against that. Weakened security. There's a broader risk profile if there are weak security practices in the industry. So, data breaches, data access. So making sure that any data collected is data protected is very, very important. Centralization, which is a huge problem. I think that relates to the first two I just mentioned. There's a lot of potential here for large players to gather even more data, either directly or via governments. And so warning against creating, reinforcing the data silos that we have today or creating fewer would be a very negative outcome that we want to avoid. And finally, group privacy. So being very conscious about the potential for vulnerable communities who will be at greater risk due to this data consolidation. So there's a need in a way to be even more privacy conscious and aware and more security focused than before when we think about new and different ways of conceiving of data governance. And to give you a sense of some of our specific positions, you can see here on the link below, you can find our submissions to various consultations and blog posts. But just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what we submitted for the EU data strategy this year, we asked that the Commission address collective harms, to empower users and explore data stewardship models with caution while thinking about innovation. So breaking open these silos, allowing innovation to be a little bit more accessible to small and medium-sized companies. And for India's non-personal data report, which will be followed by a regulation soon, probably this year, we argued for a consultative and rights-based approach, one that benefits communities, individuals, and businesses while upholding privacy and autonomy. And in particular, we advise that the Indian government first pass its data protection law and then build on those protections via non-personal data regulation. Because increasingly, with so much data, it's really hard to make that distinction between non-personal data and personal data. So we've always advised that the privacy protection should come first, and then we can build on that. And then my final slide here is another area that Mozilla, and particularly the Mozilla Foundation, has been investing in. We recently launched the Data Futures Lab. And so the Data Futures Lab is really intended to connect and to fund people around the world who are building products and service prototypes using collective data governance models. And so this is a really a way that Mozilla will be continuing our work to look at what the future of data governance can and should look like via research, and trying to identify these new and burgeoning models, connecting the dots with different communities. So it's a really interesting area of work for Mozilla. And so just to wrap up on our approach to data governance and ethical data, we've really been focused on driving internal and external impact that are grounded in our principles of the manifesto. And I've tried to show you over the course of this talk that there's sort of three dimensions to this work. One is improving internal processes and practices via programs such as lean data practices, and also helping broadly to improve industry practices. So to try to change that paradigm from, collecting more data being the key to innovation, to thinking about data in a more lean, privacy and transparency focused manner. And that actually being the key to innovation. The second pillar here, strategically engaging with governments around the world to shape data governance in a positive manner. And this is a picture of our Mozilla Morning. So it's one of our series of events that we host in Brussels. And the final one that I had just mentioned in the foundation about exploring and investing in upcoming fields and questions within data governance, such as data stewardship, collective data rights, and alternative data governance. So thank you very much.